so glad that you're back here to kind of continue the conversation after all of that excitement. I know the students have questions because I talked to them yesterday and I was like, ask this tomorrow. So, and welcome to everybody online to the Judges Forum. I'm not going to talk very long because I want you all to get into it because your words are way more elegant than mine. But I just want to say thank you for being here. Your presentations were wonderful. This is the highlight of our year, and thank you. Thank you so much. So yes, students, this is your time to reverse the Q&A back to the judges. Is anybody wanting to jump right in? I know the thoughts are there. If you need a minute to get them together, that's fine. But I'm happy to pass the mic. I know, they will continue the Q&A if you don't start your own, trust me. Yeah. Anyone want to start? Yes.
Good morning. First of all, we just want to say thank you for all the effort that you've put into in reading our documents and giving us the comments back and providing all the beautiful and wonderful feedback. My question is, what inspired you to be the judges of Wege Prize? What inspired you to be a judge for Wege Prize?
All right, who wants to go? Oh yeah, go ahead. Perfect.
It's fresh. No, great. First of all, great job to all you students from yesterday. So Brenda, for me, particularly being the new judge, it was the opportunity to work. I love working in a global context, first of all. I believe in the next generation. I just believe in you folks so strongly. And whenever I can give of myself and my time to see you go to the next level, that's my heart's desire. When you have an organization like the Wege Foundation that supports it and believes in you as well, and then KCAD and then leadership, it's a really good environment to see really good things happen. And to also, it was one of those things where it's a rarity, right? And so when you see opportunities to focus your time, to see it in result, and to see it impact the lives of people, I cleared my calendar because it just made sense. So that's in an abbreviated sense why I took part in this. So
I have to say that when I started, it's been 12 years now. Didn't know Wege, didn't know KCAD, never been to Grand Rapids. It was just I was invited by people that I respected, and I said yes. I sort of learned over the years to say yes to lots of things, not everything, but lots of things. And I think that served me well. But from the moment I got here the first year, it was really clear, like, oh, this is a great organization. That's a great organization. This is a smart group of people. So I think that I wasn't inspired to be a judge. I was just invited, and I said yes, and I came here. But I have stayed here because of the people, because of the learning that I get from all of the students and the other judges and the people who are neither but make everything happen. I think that to me is something that you might consider as you move forward in your careers. Like, what do you say yes to? What do you say no to? And what kind of leaps into the unknown are you willing to take? In fact, I'm going to turn it back on you, all of you. What inspired you to apply and do the work? Because it's a lot of work, we know. Because all of you said yes.
Yeah. So personally is seeing from the other, because I've watched videos from previous participants like over and over. I think I was telling Martha yesterday, I felt like we're at first name basis, me and her, because all the time she just pops on the screen. But I saw the impact that the other teams made, how they grew to get to the next level after the Wege Prize. And we had an idea and we thought, okay, let's do this and see if these people will see the same vision that we see. And when we started, everything was just like, we're just trying it out. Maybe it might be something, maybe it might not, but we hope to learn something from it. And with each growth and each feedback and, hey, those congratulations email that we get, those were what inspired us to be like, wow, they do believe in us, so we should keep on believing in ourselves and advance even further. And we kept pushing for that. And then we got the semifinalist, and we're like, wow, they saw that we could actually get this far, so we can take even further. And then we got the finalist email, and they're like, yeah, we have to show them that if they did believe in us up to this point, then we have to show them what they did believe in. And so far, that has been the biggest inspirational for the team, and inspired us to work even harder because we saw the effort and all the positive feedback, and we're like, yeah, we have to deliver. Pretty much, that is it.
I'd like to build on that actually. From what you were saying, so seeing other students actually getting on and doing something, that's really what inspired me to get involved. Was the circular economy is going to require innovation. It's going to involve innovation through a new lens, a new way of seeing how we can do things and achieve something different. I work a lot with large companies through my work at the University of Exeter. A lot of them are paralysed. They can't do anything. They can't shift forward. They're making incremental changes. And what inspires me about working with you guys, young people coming through, is that you have big ambitions right from the beginning. You're starting with a blank sheet of paper, and you can be flexible, nimble. You can actually redesign something, do something around the new principles, the new way of doing things, the new normal. So, as Nathan said, I learn something every time I come here. But the other thing is I get inspired. You inspire me. And I find that sometimes quite difficult with large organisations which are inhibited by the existing system. Yeah, so, we get a lot from you guys as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to also try to answer the question of Nathaniel. And personally, I'm so grateful to be here again, just like Brenda said earlier. We are so grateful for your great work that you are doing. Me having to participate for the second time and seeing your comments all the time, I kind of felt like I even grew even more with all of your ideas that you are trying to put in the document. And coming straight forward on what is the reason behind that I came to participate in the Wege Prize is that I would see so many other competitions and I would see people winning, but it never felt real. I was like, is it true that a person like me too, I can win and reach all that far? Until when I saw a friend of mine that we grew together, he's called Winfred Nziku. His team was second some years back. And I was like, I know you from zero, I know you. So if you can do it, I'm gonna do it too. And I started applying, I failed again, until now I was the finalist and we became second, and I was like, okay, at least one of my own should become first then, because now we know how it works and we can do it. We can do it. So we went doing it, and of course yesterday all of you witnessed it worked. So it's that point that I felt this is real, and these are people and they're working on it to make sure that these ideas come to life. And of course, if I put a little more of effort, they're definitely going to see it. And that has been the motive behind for me to come in Wege Prize. And hopefully next year I bring another team to Wege Prize, people that maybe might have never heard of this kind of an opportunity, that they can, from wherever they are, whatever resources they have, that they can come up with an idea. And there are a lot of people out there, people like you, who really want to see their ideas come to life. So that even inspires me even more. Yeah, thank you very much.
I just wanted to come in on a couple themes that were in the room. First of all, that I think it's really important to always just take for granted that any kind of larger construct of like an award or some sort of like big organization that has a reputation or anything like that, they're just people that like once you get to know people, you be like, I know you, or like I can approach it, etc. And I think myself included, sometimes, build up these kind of structures to be something that is unapproachable because we see them as kind of extraordinary or outside the realm of our own familiarity. And as soon as you just kind of get to realize that they're just people in a room coming up with things to do, it just becomes really approachable. And I remind myself of that every day with the kind of stuff I'm trying to do as well, is you get just intimidated just by virtue of assumption. And that's just, it's just not necessary, especially as change makers, it's not necessary. The other thing I would say is that I think as students coming into the competition, you're positioned as learning about what the circular economy is, taking our feedback as like guidance for how to do things better, etc. And I truly believe at this stage of your development and the ideas that you've brought to the table that you are as experienced and as thoughtful and have as much insight into how to build a regenerative circular economy as anyone in this room. And I think you should really take that for as a really core truth, that this world that we need to invent in the future is up to every one of us to rethink. And there's not some sort of guidebook to follow. We need to develop it ourselves. And there's a lot of things that we think of that are correct for circular economy, or this is that and this is that. We can rethink all of it, and that's our prerogative. So I think we should all feel really empowered to shape what is a circular economy and rethink the things that don't make sense in your context, or take principles and then follow them through and really think that that does make sense and create coalitions that are broader around them. But I just want to really voice that I think everyone here, and you guys especially, can shape the world in the image that you think makes sense based on your experience. And I think, you should do that.
Yeah, I want to add that you're not that far away from being in these chairs, right? You have experience, you're accomplished now, especially in terms of the Wege. You're going to be the judges of competitions sooner than you think, because of that experience. Anthony's already a successful mentor. He's on his way to having a lifelong career as a consultant. So we know that the experiences he's had here are already setting a trajectory, should he want to follow it, for his career. And there's no difference with the rest of you too. So while you feel we're the students who entered this competition and those are the judges, you're on your way already. You're going to be judges really soon.
Wow. Good morning. I'm still trying to make my thought circular, I have so many things kind of jumping out from all these experiences. I get the most benefit out of all this process, And that's my motivation. When I read the projects, and I said, oh God, why I didn't think about that? It looks so simple, but why I did not? And some of the projects I read and I said, oh God, I better go back to the drawing board, and start calling people who know about these things. And that helped me to learn more. I remember I asked you guys some calculation here and there. Can you imagine how long it took for me to figure that out? And made me completely different persons to look at it? And that motivates me a lot. The project you had about the water, those filters, man. The first time I heard about that. So these are the things keep me motivated. But even before coming to the Wege, I had some of the Earth students, who have gone through this process, they had talked to me about that. And I was really impressed, but I never thought that I will be here one day and meeting again all of you and many, many from Earth University, you know. So I'm really still a student of circular economy, and I learn every day from you guys, from new projects. You won't believe the ideas I get. I do a lot of consulting on the sugarcane and pineapple and soils and water, you know. And now I pitch them, hey, it looks like your company and your projects are not circular, you know. And they go, what? And then I refer to them, Wege Foundation, and just look at this, read these projects, you know, the finalist, summary, you know. So I brag about it all the time. And so it's good for my consulting business too, so I love it.
Yeah, does anyone have another question they want to throw out there? Yeah, go ahead.
I guess my question would be, what would you advise future students who are out there, who are developing solutions? Because I myself have I participated in so many competitions, I came across so many different solutions that people are proposing, but one thing that they lack is they do not think about circular design or how they can loop back. So what is one advice that you would give to all the students who are watching right now, like to participate in Wege Prize, and what the importance of circular economy? What is one thing that you would like to tell about?
Chell, yeah.
I can start. I'll start on that. We're struggling with that very thing after 12 years of how to get your teams to be more aware of circularity. So we're going to be refining questions, and I think it's very difficult to do a completely circular project, but I think we're going to try to chart out the chunks of the circular economy to be very clear what you're biting off and then what you haven't bitten off. And I think that'll help.
Chell.
For me, sometimes when I think about the circularity, simple is good. Simple works. But simple is so hard to think because we are complex thinkers. So one of the things that I do when I'm writing or I'm trying to come up with a hypothesis for my own work is when I look at systems that might be, linear. And I'm like, so if this is linear, but if I put this end of this line together with the end of that line, and then I twist this one around this way, and then, all of a sudden I do have a circular one. So sometimes it's about two different systems that are linear, but if you find the one thing right there, and it's simple, and it's tiny, and really when you see it, it's evident, boom, you have a circle. Or you have the infinite sign, or you have a butterfly, or you have whatever it is that you want to call it. But so sometimes it's that we are, and our education system trains us to think in lines. And so then we find ourselves up there and it's like, oh, now there's a competition and it wants us to think in circles. It's like, how do we do that, right? I keep telling my students, no, this is a circular argument. I don't want a circular argument. I want you to make sense and I want it to back it up and so forth and so on. But when you get out there, it turns out that the circular solution is the one that can actually do less harm and that can help regenerate. So that's how I think about it. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but.
I think for everyone thinking about, how to develop a solution in this space, one of the most important framings, I think, is trying to embed a paradigm shift or a way of thinking into a specific design intervention. So instead of, I would really caution against trying to imagine to design an entire new system. I think that's great for visioning purposes. But you have to start with with a intervention, and the key thing is to embed as much as possible that systems thinking into the design of that one intervention. So it doesn't mean having to like create all these links with the whole system and then take care of all those links, actually do all of that. That creates like just a crazy amount of it just is paralyzing, really, and it's not really feasible. But, for instance, like I'll give you an example. So in my area of developing bio-based materials, there obviously feedstock sourcing through to processing, through to end of life, and infrastructure is all part of like the whole system shift that's necessary for new materials to actually be regenerative and sustainable. One can't, as a new material startup or any player in the space, take care of all of those parts of the system. But what you can do is when you're making a material, you can say, I'm going to follow these principles for feedstock sourcing that needs to be from waste or from regenerative sourcing practices. I need to use green chemistry in the processing of it because I know by doing that, end of life will be possible to be part of a regenerative system. I might not be able to control policy and infrastructure and composting legislation and recycling capabilities and all that, but what I can do is ensure that the design of my material fits with all of these potential systems that are regenerative if and then maybe it's like catalyzing other ecosystem players to come to the table, et cetera. But I think it's that really important balance of thinking in terms of the larger system and then baking in those principles that you want to follow into your unique and specific design. And then as you go along, building out kind of alliances and catalytic kind of partnerships that can over time really make in your image or the image of the change that you see a larger system shift happen.
And just building on what Alicia's saying there, the system, it's a whole system here. So you can't be circular until the whole system is circular. So it's impossible for you to think about all those things. But are you circular ready? Is your product ready for a circular system? And I think that's kind of like a really good starting point. And some ways in which you can consider this, and I was talking about this yesterday evening, was this is not just about materials, it's not about waste management, it's about building different important systems values. And we often call them impacts, and I'm kind of veering away from that word because I think value is for me personally, is a much more valuable word. Valuable is a much more valuable word. Are you building social value? Am I building cultural value? Am I building economic value? Am I building natural value? Does my idea contribute to the regeneration of these things rather than the degradation of these things? Because essentially, that's what we're shifting away from. We're trying to shift away from a linear economy, which degrades all of these things. It degrades economic, social values in many cases. Not all cases, obviously, but in many cases that's its modus operandi. So shifting to a circular economy, are we able to rebuild and regenerate these things? And does my idea contribute towards that? Am I circular ready? So I think what could be quite a good idea, and I'm just thinking about this now on the fly here, is looking at lots of case studies and examples of what other people are doing and what inspires you, even outside the realms of your own interest. Perhaps if you're interested in water management or food or whatever, but look for people who are doing inspirational things and be critical of what they're doing and saying, well, what would I do different? Are they circular ready? So maybe that's a kind of process that you could sort of add to your thinking. Have a little bit of a kind of an ometer in your mind saying, be critical of other things, using those principles of, is it regenerative and is it building value across these different strands?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, there's all this complexity, and obviously systems and taking a systems view is incredibly important to not just indie solutions, but certainly here at the Wege Prize. But I see a lot of projects that are very much focused on this new technology will solve this new material, this new solution, this new design, et cetera. And while that's true to a point, even the most amazing technologies that are transformative are always bounded by people. And so I feel like when I'm critiquing projects, I'm making the same comments on every project. How are you going to get people to change their behavior? Because as complex as nature is, as complex as the systems are, as hard as the chemistry or the technology is, people are much harder. And if you can't, you can have the best solution in the world, and if you can't get people to change what they're doing, to do it differently, like that's why 90% of or more startups fail. So the thing that I think that many teams don't get until maybe at the end of the process is that you have to have a way to convince people, and maybe some evidence to change their behavior, because you're treading water and you're going to sink unless you have that mechanism.
I guess I'd like to add that how I would inspire students to look at sustainable design and circular economy is everything has to be reinvented. Almost everything has to be reinvented. The industrial culture has moved fast and profitably, but at the expense of health of humans and the ecosystem. So doing it without petroleum, I mean, I've been in the business 40 years and involved in environmental cleanups, permittings, design, and almost everything is connected to petroleum. And everything bad is connected to petroleum. Plastics, chemicals, fuel, everything. Clothing, it all comes from petroleum. And there's no safe way to send petroleum out into commerce at this point. So the design, coming up with these solutions in a safe way, is the only thing left to do. So if that's not an inspiration to get involved in green design, sustainable design, circular economy, then we just perpetuate the death cycle we're in.
As a student of just learning in general, and as the non-science, well, it's like not non-science, but the person that does not have science as a background coming to this room, where I find myself in rooms like that all the time, because those rooms really intrigue me. Maybe there's something the way that I learn from things, because I'm always in types of rooms where people think differently. I would tell you, don't get so myopic in your discipline that you forget there's a world outside of your discipline. I love spending time with futurists and scientists, and my focus in investments and trade and those types of things in film is because I'm curious about how all the dots connect. And so I would say, don't be afraid of going into rooms or looking at different disciplines where people are not science-based, where that may not be their background. Because sometimes you have to zoom out and kind of get a broader view of how it's all connected, right? And so sometimes those rooms get really small because everybody thinks the same. So that's why you want to find and build relationships with people that might be in various different disciplines, because just look at the bumblebee. That cross-pollination of ideas is a beautiful thing, right? They do it actually, but as people, we should also follow that discipline. Ideas, like Ted says, ideas worth spreading. And so make sure that you don't surround yourself with people that think just like you. That's dangerous. That's homogeneity. It's anti-innovation, right? Because you want heterogeneous in your friendships, in your relationships, in your working relationships, because it actually allows different perspectives to flood your thinking. Some of the best innovations for what you're doing, they may not come from you actually working in the food or working in the field or working here. Some of the best ideas that I have and that I implement, they've come from doing something completely different, but then I know how to connect it. And so but I'm also open with my relationships, because you never know when you meet someone, you're like, I just love the way you think, and they might be in completely different discipline, right? So think about that as you begin to just go down that path, that your circle and your discipline circle, continue to broaden it, right? You know, one of the innovations I saw, it was literally, I was in a restaurant in Dallas, Texas, and I looked at how the lady was changing the cartridge, but the flavor cartridge, in terms of how she made Coca-Cola. That's how you get those machines that have like 100 different versions of Coca-Cola, which I didn't know existed. But I looked at that innovation, and it's the same thing on my inkjet printer. She was blending flavors. My inkjet printer blends colors. You're like, wow, there's something there. And so sometimes the ideas may come from someplace completely different. So always be open to that, right? Yeah.
So I want to bring it back to your first question, because I didn't get a chance to answer about the judges, about inspiration that brought the judges here. And also kind of rebounding off of his point of bringing in other perspectives to the table. I came on board Wege Foundation as a next gen. My grandfather is Peter Wege, who started the Wege Foundation. So I was asked by the then CEO, when I was coming on board to learn about what my foundation, what my grandfather had created, how I could contribute and how I could come on board. At the time, I was in film and television, storyboard artist, animator, living in California, and most of my artwork was based around working with recycled or repurposed materials. So in a way, I was sort of already grasping the concepts of working with materials and getting them back into the system. But for me, it was creatively. So at the time, the CEO at the time was a woman named Ellen Satterley, and she said, and I also, to give you some background, I got my master's at UCal Berkeley, went back into film and television, but I ended up teaching at UCal Berkeley, and she had told me about this program, which had just been started. And at the time, I was in the Bay Area where Silicon Valley was going on, and one of the first creators that helped Gail come up with the idea of the circular economy solution prize was, I think he was working at Google or Apple. He's an extremely brilliant person, and helped craft the idea, which became the Wege Prize. So it had been in operation for 1 year, and I had been a next gen for about 3 years at the time, and she suggested that I come on board as a judge. So at the time I thought, I don't know if I'm really right for this, because this stuff is a little heady for me. I'm not really sure. And she said, you know what, we need another perspective. And it might be something where you can interject some of your ideas and notions, like why did you choose to work in these type of materials? And why is it important to you to craft and sculpt and work in this way? And also, let me give you, I was working in animation on paper. This was not digital. Okay, I was drawing, animating, timing, doing all that stuff without digital applications that came later. So in essence, I think I did not see myself as a judge, and now it's been 11 years, 12 for you, 11 for me, and I was asked that question like, wow, I never saw myself as in this position, and now I absolutely love it. It intrigues me to no end. I've learned so much, and now I really do feel I have a voice that I'm able to help usher you guys along in telling your story, so that it's palatable, so that other people can understand it. So it's not so scientifically lofty, but bringing it down to a cultural aspect and a cultural shift that you guys are all trying to create. So I thought I just wanted to say that, to go back to your original question.
Interdisciplinary collaboration, yes. Anyone else? on that note or to start another? Yes, go ahead, Charles.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this session. I think it's incredible also like to hear from what you guys are saying. I had a bunch of questions, but I think I'll go ahead and like ask this singular question. There's a lot of aspects to the circular economy, and I think for me, one of the things I've learned is across how we are redesigning materials or we are thinking about the end of life of whatever products we are making, the most important thing I've come to learn, at least for me, is these new systems and these new like system shifts need to be inclusive, right? And that's then leads me into using business as a force for good and like social entrepreneurship and all these things. Because at the end of the day, you think about solutions that sort of like come across the program and things like things that have in them the potential to like help a lot of people get better healthcare, get out of poverty, right? You think about the work that Brenda are doing with like mealworms and at no extra cost for the people consuming them. What's your thinking as judges now for could be 12 years, which is the entire time Wege Prize has been running, or newer judges? How are you thinking about number one, what are you seeing in every subsequent edition of the Wege Prize in terms of how the projects are coming in? How are people thinking about what happens after the program? Are we seeing this coming in as single standalone projects, or are we seeing them being pushed or nudged towards scalable businesses that will then, as the business scales, so then does the impact, and then could be proof points for people to say, you know what, I don't have to convince you so much about like the circular economy. Look at these guys and what like they've been able to do. What's your thinking around that? I think that will be my question. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of diversity in how people go on after the cohort, and I think that's good. Some have done a lot of development, maybe over even a few cycles of applying, but also just in their own environments to develop concepts that are more or less ready to take steps in real business environments. Others are before that and are still developing the kind of the team, the ecosystem that's necessary to develop it further. And I think that diversity is good. It doesn't have to be all like ready for scale up. It's not that kind of approach to things, and I think that's healthy. I also think that after Wege Prize, it's still really important to think about the development of an innovation as being very organic. And I think as leaders, we have to be very patient with timing on developing an idea and making it happen, in quotes. And a lot of that timing relates to financing, ability to actually, put money into a real team that has the capacity. It's also team building. It's also timing with the world as well. Like sometimes you get a break and you get people's attention and it kind of aligns with a conversation that's happening that's larger than you. And I think, so I think there is an element of course, like just pushing stuff forward, but I also think patience is a really important ingredient if you're really committed to it. And so I think seeing the journey that you're on now as being like part of a much larger trajectory or path that you're walking is really important. So you don't feel like you're trying to do something and then the first kind of like roadblocks that you find, you think, it's not working. It's like, well, maybe it doesn't work today, but like give it a month, give it a year, and find a new person to work with, find a new kind of like potential someone to give you some more money. Like it just requires a lot of pathfinding. So I would say that a lot, the folks that have been really successful and continue to build their companies and their visions are those that are just like have a North Star and are figuring it out over time.
You are all so far ahead of everyone else, the world, and especially the world of business. They don't get this. They're not looking at this. They're not looking for this. And especially right now in this country with our now 2 steps back philosophy as opposed to 2 steps forward, nobody invests money in something just to make money. There's a zillion ways that they can make money safer. People invest in organizations because they're inspired. So your storytelling skills are probably more important than your tabulation or technology or discovery skills, because you need to figure out how to inspire someone to join you. And so I would turn the term inclusive backwards and say, you need to find ways to include or make people feel included in your vision, in your project. Because it's not until they feel that they have a piece of it and they're inspired to come along the journey with you that they're ever going to give you money. So that needs to be one of your superpowers. How do you include other people to get excited and inspired about what you and what they can help you achieve?
So, I feel that there are plenty of students working on this kind of circular projects, but dedicating a lot of effort and timing. But our work is built in linear projects. So, what do you think about the real world implementation of circular projects? Because as the main competitors are really big and linear, so this kind of game-changing projects, how can be really implemented to be successfully in large scale?
The best piece of advice I ever got in design school was, when everyone zigs, zag. And if everyone's linear, go circular. And that's how you're going to set yourself apart.
Yeah, the difference between linear and circular are a couple of more dots, right? So you have line, once you have 2 dots, maybe you can go a straight line, keep putting more line, it becomes curve and hopefully more, and it becomes circular, But you can also look at the dot itself, just one dot in the circle, your project, in the whole linear process, just your dot. And think about that. Your dot itself is a circular. Look at how the dot is made. So many points to make the dot. The whole idea is to getting the connection. And you can convince people, because you have the elements that will convince them. We are talking about sustainability. We are talking about, hey, the world will go nowhere when you go linear. You can always come back, the earth is round, you keep walking linear, straight, and it's going to take so long that you'll not survive. So these are some of the elements in circular economy that will give you the power to convince people. But work on your dot, keep it connected. You understand how it connects, because the dot itself is so complex. Just one new innovation, just one dot, is very, very complex to do it. So think about that. What I am going to kind of ask you guys, related to your first question about what's next, how are you going to move forward? Let's think about that. It's a long process, we know that. It's just the idea got approved here, and you have to keep working on it. It's a long process. Your partnership, funding, right time, right place. So all of them have to kind of get together for the project to be successful, But going from here, what are you going to do? In your project proposal, you had a budget sheet. You said, okay, we need to get this, we need to get that, and that will help you to move to the next step. So after winning the prize, how you think you're going to work together? We understand that you come from different institutions, different places, you have different goals. So how are you going to move forward your project from here onward?
I have a couple comments on that question that you posed. The first is, I think, a really practical approach to making these innovations that we all are pushing forward actually work in reality, is creating alliances and communities of organizations and people that all have similar visions and are trying to push in the same direction. So for instance, in the world of regenerative materials that I work in, we constantly are in contact with other companies, other organizations and enablers in the ecosystem who all see a different world as possible. Now, individually, everyone feels completely overwhelmed, right? Like it's just a totally huge, massive system to shift around, like getting off petroleum, to your point. It's like, that is a task of a generation. It's not something that you can be like, we're gonna do this. And you're like, no, we are gonna do this as a much broader community. And so you need to surround yourself and put yourself in contact with lots of great people doing their own angle and their own leverage point for this larger system shift to happen. And if you can do that, one, it's super fun because these are all really cool people to hang out with. Two, you find new leverage points by virtue of collaboration. So for instance, like what we're trying to do this year is we're developing a relationship with a few innovators, a converter in the space, like a policy organization, et cetera. And like together you feel like, yeah, you do have the capacity to make a real proof point that other people will like look at and say, hey, that makes sense. So I think that kind of like, yeah, larger community building is really important just for your own sake. And then second of all, in general, the kind of world of systems change, I think there's some, I'm not going to get this totally right, but there's some level of bias that we have where we usually way overestimate the amount of change that's possible in 1 year or 5 years, but massively underestimate the amount of change that's possible in 10 or 15. It's just like our brains are not really good at being able to understand what kind of broader system shift is actually possible in longer timescales. And coupled that with systems change methodology, which is all about tipping points, where you can get collective capacity that's starting to boil and kind of foment change seemingly under the surface. And then sometimes the dots join up and you reach a tipping point that's unexpected. And there's a lot of sudden repercussions and consequences that come from those changes. But it's all because for years, people have been identifying new ways of being, figuring out new materials and new practices and new solutions. And then when all that comes together, there can be massive shifts. So you sometimes only need a certain percentage of the system to actually change, but the connectivity that we all have can create tipping points. So I think it can seem daunting until suddenly it's possible. And we all need to be ready for that shift to happen.
And like just one last point, and that is that in 1970, the Club of Rome published the first modeling of economic development on the environment. It resulted in a report called Limits to Growth. And one of the key authors of that was a woman by the name of Donella Meadows. And she went on to write a technical paper on how to intervene in a system that's corrupted. The Wege Prize is intervening in that system with you. Our hope is that you go out in your careers, and not in the next year or 2 years, but over the course of 25 years, you influence your colleagues, the people you work with, and you take the learnings that you got through the Wege Prize and you spread that, and it becomes a bigger movement. and it makes it happen faster. So we hope that this is a successful intervention.
And I was going to say that, I mean, that's super inspiring, I love it. But even, which I don't hope it's going to happen, but even if coming out of here, the only thing you did was have a conversation about what happened here, that's already shifting. It's already shifting things. It's moving tectonic plates around there. So you don't have to go around there evangelizing, although, of course, please do. But even if you just have a conversation, you're already trying to shift. A couple of you said to me, oh, your comment really helped. I just wrote a line. I didn't know how it would be received. And it shifted. So just a word. Just be honest. Just be fragile. Just be vulnerable. And say, my goodness, this happened to me. And it was transformative. And then you might be actually inspiring, maybe not even that person, but that person will talk to another person, to another person, to another person, and the sixth person down the line will be the one inspired by something that somebody said that they didn't know. So just talk.
Thank you very much. I really feel I'm needed also to comment on this question. Having participated last year, and maybe someone will be like, okay, where have you reached so far? One will really want to hear the story afterwards, which I think you guys also will be interested to hear. But I want to make it clear to you that, like, operating a business, having money with people, it's so different from sitting down and writing an idea into paper. So I just want you to be very careful after you win an award onto your next move, because if it is the right time and you had a right plan, you have right people with you, I will really urge you to make that move. But if you are still not sure, it's better you go on learning than throwing all that investment that you have earned or you got today into that one little thing that you think is going to work, but you are still not sure in a certain dot, and it might take off a lot of your energy after if it doesn't go well. So I would wish that, winning a prize is one thing, but establishing a successful business, it's a whole of a different story. You need to learn a lot. You need to read a lot, not how innovative you could be, but also how could you really manage that business and have something coming in as the way you expect. So I would really suggest not to rush into this. Like, don't think that, okay, now I have $10,000. What do I do tomorrow? Do we buy 10,000 sacks of these materials to go on? And if really it doesn't work at the end, I can imagine the disappointment, because nobody here is going to send you $100 to push you more. So what I want all of you to live out with here, the students, that's what I learned last year, is that you should really value the process you went through to reach today. Like, if you can go back and start thinking what you did to reach here, how I wish is that you start using those characters you have built throughout this 9 months, to become even a better person. Because if you were able to do this and reach today, consider that you were given an award for a quick rest that you did. And now try to see in each point of your race really what really motivated you to do this. And now you can make so many other ideas just out of what you have been able to achieve today. Personally, I started writing books. I started attending different conferences. I'm opening different businesses and forming partnership with people that I met long time ago. Because throughout the 9 months that I worked here, I learned how to communicate with people and how to sell my story very well in such a way that people are like, okay, I think you have a point. We can do this thing together, and I get the opportunity like that. So it shouldn't be really about the prize and the money and what next, but it should really be about you as an individual, like the way the judges have been insisting. What are you living with here today? Are you living out as a leader that you are ready to lead yourself properly, and really people can see that impact and wish to become like you? So at the end, if you go and establish a business and it works, well and good, we thank God, because we are sure that people are going to be employed and get results. But you as an individual, like, what will you live with today? I think that's what is the most important thing. Yeah.
I think like, thank you for that. You've said that, and I remembered something. There's something I saw, and Martha, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the judges, or like the Wege Prize, added the material analysis. I think over the last 1 or 2 years, it wasn't there before, which like makes me ask, particularly to you judges, what do you think? Because I feel like that means that the whole Wege Prize community is still learning from the process with each new iteration and each new version. What do you think is the next shift of thinking about the circular economy, and be it projects or solutions or businesses, whatever form that comes in as an application? What do you think is that next phase? And the reason I'm asking that question is because there's a question that we have been constantly asked by the judges, particularly Judge Tom, and it was about how are you ensuring that your material actually gets back to the earth at its end of life, which is a very important question. But let me just give you a little sneak peek about what happens when like you asked us that question. All of us sat down and you're like, so we make materials. We sell materials to brands. Brands make products. They sell to consumers. We are only responsible for up to where we take the material to brands, right? So it's very difficult to like think about where that material actually ends up, and that I think that's why for us in the design, it was easier to design the material to wherever it lands, it needs to like just decompose. The very first thing that we were doing for Wege Prize, I think this is for the participants, is we were trying to like we were doing like a mechanical extraction with pineapple fibers, right? And pineapple fibers, you need to coat them and like post finishing. And like in the coating, you use a lot of chemicals that at the end of their life make the pineapple fibers again not as good for the environment. So that's why we had to pivot to like PHA. So that's a very interesting question that we came across. Up to now, yesterday, if you asked me that on stage, I'll be like, we haven't figured that out. So how do you think about, because I think the thinking of how then do you design the thinking about the end of life of products and materials you don't have control over? And I think I can say that for every single team, if you guys permit me, right? For Brenda, when like they make their flower and it goes out to the end consumer, they can't be very sure where the packaging ends up or like what happens to it. For Envirovex, whenever like they use their enzymes and like the enzymes are like discharged to the waterways, they can't be sure for a fact that like Dubai municipality recovers the D enzymes, right? So how do you think about that?
Well, I think if you're working in a global system like you suggested you're working in, you have you don't have a lot of control over that situation. So one of the things that worked in this region, which is furniture office centric, we make all the furniture in here, and 50% of the office furniture in the world is made in this region. They developed a sustainable product standard that shifted the industry significantly. I mean, it made a difference in how they designed products, manufactured products, and how they considered the end of life of the product. So I would suggest that you work through industry associations, influence them, bring your ideas to the table, and insist that they listen to you, and to the extent that you can, bring the voice of the customer with you, that they want that same kind of approach.
Yeah, a similar take on it is that I think recognizing where you are in the bigger system and really understanding your leverage point for change. I can't say enough about Donella Meadows' framework, so I really recommend you Googling it, Donella Meadows' points for system change. So understanding where you are in the system is important. And then it's about not being able to control, but rather to be able to identify and input that systems thinking into your particular innovation. So when it comes to materials, here's an example of someone who's done this really well. So Notpla is the company that makes seaweed biodegradable coatings. And what they did is that they specifically designed their coating to be dissolvable so that when it's coated on paper, the paper can be recycled in the process with the coating not affecting anything at all, just washes out in the paper recycling process. But they designed it specifically with that manufacturing process in mind, that recycling process in mind, knowing that their coating would go onto paper and that paper had to be recycled and it couldn't be compromised. Otherwise, they would be having a massive unintended consequence on paper recycling, which is a good thing. So that is an example of not controlling the recycling process or anything like that, but actually taking a step further than making the coating and thinking, okay, how is this going to be going onto paper substrate and what's that going to happen after end of life? And then taking that into their design thinking. They also certified that process. So they worked with the Dutch government with a grant to actually monitor and measure every part of that so that the Dutch government, after that process, certified their material as plastic free. Now that's not appropriate for every material, and it doesn't have to be, there's lots of different stories of end of life that are in a circular economy, but that's an example of like bringing into the right stakeholders, designing it into their system so that they are like a part of a novel systems change future, right? They're actually so it's possible, but it's possible if you like first say it's not within our control, but it is within our influence if we use those kind of principles and put it into our design process.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. That's actually come up in our judging. Is having you guys actually acknowledge that very fact that you're part of that circular economic picture, but this is that piece that you have been unable to identify how to address. And that's where, thereby identifying it so that it's out there, maybe that would lead to another partnership, that would lead to another solution, that maybe it's out there that you are, you're tackling one end of the solution and hopefully somebody else will be able to find, or it's out there for the need for somebody to figure out that one component to complete your circular economic vision.
Jump in real quick and just do a time check. It's almost 11:15, and I know there are flights to catch and other things to do. So if you need to step out, feel free. Probably have time for one more question or one more answer before we wrap this up. But I know we're deep in conversation and not all looking at our phones and watches, which is a wonderful thing. So just throwing that in there. But Chell, you have the mic. Did you want to?
Yeah. Kind of building up a little bit on what Chris and then Alicia were saying, I think the circular economy is a mindset, and that's what it takes 9 months, because you begin with these ideas, and your first proposals are very linear, and we keep saying, "Wait, what? How is the loop? Is there a loop? This infographic is just a line, right?" And that's where we begin, and then in the second phase, we're like, "Oh, okay, so." That, you added 2 more dots. Okay, great. But how about that? So it's a mindset That's the whole point. So what Alicia was saying is like, you can't be looking at precisely what you're doing right now. You have to then be looking at, okay, so how is this product potentially going to be used? And maybe to do that, you just actually distribute your product and see how people are using it and what people think to do with the product once they are trying to dispose of it. And then you get an idea. And in that way, you can kind of anticipate and then already design with that idea. Does that make sense? I'm not saying anything that nobody else in the room has said, but that, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add that yes, the system is not set up to do this for you or to help you do it even, but you can always make, there's always lots of little interventions or circumventions that are available to you. That camera tripod, I guarantee you, not every part on that tripod has been stamped with its material identification symbol. So is it recyclable? Well, theoretically it is. Will it be recycled? No. No one in the recycling system is going to pull apart and try to identify every. So that's a little intervention that we can do to actually start to circularize things. It's a very famous book that came out, I think, 20 years ago now, called Cradle to Cradle, about sustainability. And a big deal was made in the promotion of the book that all the pages were made from PET plastic. And so they popularized the term upcycled because they claimed that you could put the book into a PET recycling system and get a whole new book, you know, or other things, but like it could be brought back to its original state, except they never put anywhere on the book how. What are you as the readers, what are you supposed to do to make this happen, right? There was no symbol on the book, there's no instructions, right? So that's a really simple thing that they could have done to close that loop and make that cycle work. So even though the system is not set up to help you be circular, there are almost always little things that you can do to circumvent the dysfunction in the system and circularize your solution that much more.
And just sort of to bring that together around a metaphor, which is the metaphor that is often used around the circular economy, which is ecosystems, you know, complex adaptive systems, which is what the circular economy is based on, that's how ecosystems evolve. It isn't just one big thing that happens overnight. It's something that builds up depending on the opportunities at all of the different levels within the system. So something happens, you know, an insect moves in, it does something, or something happens within the system, and other parts of the system will evolve around that. And but they're all working towards the same vision. Everything within that ecosystem is all working towards the regeneration of the system because they realize that their ability to thrive is based on that system. So they're very much work within the principles of ecosystems. So I would say when you sort of take that away with you as the metaphor for circular economy is absolutely, as we've all said here, it's impossible because it is a system. So you can't achieve it overnight. You can't achieve it individually. It has to be a collective thing. But we've all got to be working towards the same thing, and we've all got to believe in the same principles of what and how we can do that. But within that, within those boundaries, it's a fantastic environment for innovation, depending on the context you're working in, because there's no one-size-fits-all solution to the circular economy. It's all relevant to the environment that you're working in. You know, the equatorial rainforests of the Amazon are incredibly different from the boreal forests of Alaska, but both of them have got different species in them, they've got different trees, they're all evolved depending on the environment, the soil, the geography, all of those things. But they're exactly the same in terms of the principles that have used to reach that point, yeah? And so, you know, perhaps the metaphor of the forest is good in terms of how you can understand, how you can bring all those different parts together, yeah?
I think on that note, I love that metaphor, so let's just cap that up right there. Thank you for anyone who is watching online, and thank you all students for your questions, judges for your answers, and Anthony has a little bit of both. We appreciate your words, and yeah, thank you all so much.